Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hope you had a very good morning break after all the excitement in the morning and got yourself a good shot in the Wi-Fi. So in this segment, we'll be talking about the role of professional services in developing the digital economy. Not only from the service provider side, the SMPs and the Big Four, but also from the corporate side. Because professional services are essential in terms of a corporate's growth, business growth, and you will see it in a moment. And of course, we'll be talking about the new research report, the market demand for professional services, in a short while. So even back in 2010, right, CDAS, when the CDAS report came out, we already noted that Singapore is widely recognized as an established global professional services center alongside Hong Kong, Sydney, Shanghai, Tokyo, and so on and so forth. All these cities are global city hubs which have got key capital markets. Wherever you find key capital markets, you'll also find that the contribution from professional services is quite significant. So EDB says that Singapore is a regional hub of choice for professional services firms offering a cosmopolitan workforce and trusted regulatory framework. So in terms of professional services, right, and in terms of its contribution to GDP is quite significant and is actually growing. Singapore is considered a regional hub. But it is not only in Singapore. Globally, there has been an upsurge and a rise in the demand for professional services. The IAB World Survey, the International Accountancy Bulletin 2016 says that advisory services have been the star performer for professional services. And more recently, and also in 2016, MGI Worldwide said that medium-sized SMPs are beginning to earn significant revenues from services that were virtually non-existent a decade ago, such as cybersecurity and data analytics. So it is very interesting how professional services is drifting into the technology space. Earlier in the year, the industry transformation map for professional services was launched, as what the minister said this morning. And this was, of course, against the backdrop of the CFE report. So the professional services sector is basically predicted to grow at 4.6% from 2015 to reach a value add of 31 billion by 2020 and generate 5,500 new jobs. And in 2016, it contributed about $25 billion or 6.5% of Singapore's GDP. But when you look at this figure, 6.5%, you will realize, of course, there's much more potential for growth. Because if you compare it with the UK, the professional services sector in the UK actually contributes about 15% to the GDP. And quite significantly also, it says that the ITM is basically will equip workers with skills in high growth areas such as data science, analytics, and AI. Okay, so here again, you see how professional services are mushrooming. And a lot of the growth is actually spurred by technology expertise, including cybersecurity, data science, analytics, and artificial intelligence. So what I can say is that professional services serve as an external aid that can act as a powerful catalyst to develop and expand the digital economy and transform Southeast Asia into a smart region. Now, professional services not only for the big guys, okay? Increasingly, SMPs are actually providing professional services in a wide range of areas. According to our survey, which I'll talk about in a little while, but just share some preliminary data, 88% or about 90% of non-SMEs engage Big Four firms. Non-SMEs in this particular case are the larger than SMEs. Okay, we use the MTI, the Singapore's MTI definition of an SME, which is annual turnovers of more than $100 million. So non-SMEs are the companies which have annual turnovers of more than $100 million. And here it says 90% of these large companies engage the big four firms, which is not, I mean, everybody knows that, is not big news. And 71% of SMEs are using SMPs, also nothing surprising about that. But it also says, and what is interesting is that 60% of non-SMEs, which are the larger companies, are actually using SMPs. Of course, if you compare the box to the extreme right to the extreme left, you will realize that the big companies are in fact not only using the big four firms, but are simultaneously using the small and medium-sized practices to get ahead. And the IFAC Global S&P survey says advisory and consulting services revenue growth was up in 2015 for 32% of SMPs. So a lot of this growth is going to benefit SMPs. Now, if you look at our preliminary data again, okay, you will realize that corporates are actually spending a lot of money, and they are going to spend a lot of money on professional services in the next 3 years. For example, 20% of the respondents to the survey actually said that they were going to spend more than $1 million over the next 3 years on professional services. And more than 50%, or about 55%, say that they're going to spend more than $100,000 Singapore dollars, okay, on professional services in the next 3 years. So why such interest in professional services? That's the question. Why are they spending so much? Why are they allocating so much of the budget to professional services? So the World Bank Group says the emergence of advisory and consultancy services has been driven by the growing demand from SME owners for specialist advice to help them achieve a competitive advantage. Okay, so the professional services is probably the secret weapon that your competitors use to get ahead and to achieve even accelerated growth. It also, EDB says that professional consulting services, which the EDB is nurturing, and they will be talking about this in the afternoon, is a key sector that supports firms in making critical business decisions. So not sufficient to just have internal expertise, you can tap on external expertise by engaging a professional consultant. Now, let's come to this report, which we are launching today. It's called the Market Demand for Professional Business and Advisory Services, covering Singapore, ASEAN region, and China. This research report is actually supported by the Singapore Accountancy Commission, and we had worked, and ACC had worked with them quite closely to come up with this report. It is complementary to SAC's annual AE Census supply side survey. If you're an SMP, or if you're even from the Big Four, you would have received a survey form from the SAC every year to tell them what services that you have provided in the past year. So this is supply side looking 1 year before. So what we thought about doing is look at the future, the next 3 years, and look at the demand from corporates. What do they actually require in the next 3 years? And we actually covered 39 service lines over 8 service categories, which actually mirror SAC's AE Census survey service lines, but added a few because we are looking at the future, so not all the services that the AE Census covers, you know, we added a few more services, including business model innovation and so on and so forth, that looks to the future, the next 3 years. And also we'll basically look at it from 4 lenses, okay? From the perspective of large companies, MNCs, from the perspective of SMEs, from the perspective of the Big Four, and also from the perspective of SMPs. Now, in terms of the respondents, we had a good mix of small companies as well as large companies. We had 78 companies which had revenues below $10 million, but we also had 53 companies which had revenues of $1 billion or more, and in between we had various other sizes of companies. In terms of spending, right, in Singapore, you will, the data shows that companies with $1 billion and over spend about 0.08% of their revenue on professional services. Companies between 100 million and $1 billion spend about 0.18%, and companies $10 million and to about $100 million spent about 0.36% of their revenue on professional services. So you can see a trend here. The smaller the company, the more it spends on professional services in terms of the percentage against its revenue. In terms of the roles of the respondents, most were CFOs, finance and accounting managers. There were a total of 275 respondents, 128 from the ASEAN region, including Singapore, and 147 from China, including Hong Kong. About 95% of the respondents engage external entities for professional services. So the question is this: since you are in the room, right? I would like to ask you, before I show you the survey results, okay, what do you think will be the most demanded professional service in the next 3 years? In order for you to answer that question, I'll give you some clues. Okay, we asked the corporates, okay, in order to understand their needs for professional services, we asked them, what are their drivers for growth? What sort of professional services will accelerate their growth? In what area? So the first area that they think that will really accelerate their growth is an increase in higher value add work through automation. The second is talent attraction, development, and retention for the big companies, and business model innovation for SMEs. And the third, mergers and acquisitions for the big companies, and talent attraction, development, and retention for the SMEs. So can we show the poll? And see, hopefully there's some results. Okay, so you've got, what is that? 75%. This is very strange. Did you read the report before you took this? I wonder. But, okay, risk advisory is 0%. That's interesting. No risks. You're not seeing any risks. International tax advisory, 17%. Accounting advisory, 17%. IT solution business, 67%. Okay, now risk advisory has suddenly popped up, 19%. Interesting. Just give you another few seconds before you may get a prize if you get the correct answer. Okay, so basically the IT solution business has gone down a little bit. Okay, so IT solution business is about 47%, risk is number one. 20% risk advisory is number two. Accounting advisory is also 20%, so is a tie between risk advisory and accounting advisory. And of course, you have 11% for international tax advisory, which is very close. Actually, let's go back to the my slide. Okay, so yeah, most of you have guessed very, very accurately, because the first, the most popular professional service is indeed IT solution business, which means, it talks about digital transformation work, cybersecurity, data analytics, and so on and so forth related to that. Okay, there's a great need for this. Risk advisory is second, which you have actually guessed correctly, and international tax advisory. So fantastic. I shouldn't have taken the survey, spent 3 months. I should have just asked you, So you see some numbers on the right of the service lines. These are service lines. You see 2.84 and 2.43 and 2.42. These numbers actually are indicative of how much or what proportion of the budget this particular business or corporate has allocated to this particular service line. Now, in terms of non-regulated services, what do I mean by non-regulated? It simply means that it is, you do not require the service because of the law or because of some regulation. Okay? For example, regulated services include statutory audits and tax compliance, right? And of course, IT solution business is a non-regulated, largely non-regulated professional service. Now, so in terms of non-regulated service, IT solution business is number one. Okay, service lines overall, you have the first one, statutory audit, second is IT solution business, and third is tax compliance. So in terms of overall service lines, okay, businesses are actually setting aside budget for IT solution business, okay, both as a non-regulated service and for services overall, you see IT solution business there. So very, very strong emphasis, you know, on IT solution business, which means that everybody wants to plug into the digital economy. Now, here we can see a geographical analysis. Just now you saw what you saw was all the companies, IT solution business, risk advisory, and international tax advisory. But if you look at Singapore's data, right, there are some interesting differences. The first one being accounting advisory, okay? So you got IT solution business first, international tax second, and accounting advisory third, okay? So that's another growing area that SMPs can provide to SMEs, because if you look at the SME data, right, you see again accounting advisory there. Now in China, right, you can also see a very strong emphasis on accounting advisory from what I heard from my China colleagues. This is because of the introduction of the IFRS and so on and so forth. Thank you. Right? So, and because of the rise of mobile e-commerce in China, there's a great demand for accounting advisory, not only in IT solution business and so on and so forth, but also accounting advisory and risk advisory second, and process improvement third. Of course, this is for SMEs in China. If you want to know more, you want to have more details, read the report, because there's lots of data relating to China and Singapore and ASEAN excluding Singapore. Now, if we actually dig a little deeper, right, if you look at the non-regulated service lines, okay, you've got statutory audit, you've got IT solution business, compliance in corporate and personal tax, risk advisory, international tax advisory. Now, three of these, IT solution business, risk advisory, and international tax advisory, are actually non-regulated. So if you look at all the service lines, three of the 5 top service lines are actually non-regulated service lines. And if you break it down even further and you look at the sectors, okay, if you look at the service sector, for example, retail and financial services, as opposed to production, which is manufacturing, construction, and so on and so forth, you also see, okay, some differences, but IT solution business still comes up. For service industries, IT solution business is actually number 1, and international tax advisory followed by accounting advisory. For production, manufacturing, and so on and so forth, you got international tax advisory as the number 1 professional service demanded by corporates, IT solution business second, and technology consulting third, data analytics fourth, and other assurance. So out of the 5 service lines under production, 3 of them actually relate to digital areas of expertise or professional services. You got technology consulting, you got data analytics, you got IT solution business. Now, non-SMEs or the larger companies have a stronger tendency to introduce more technology into their business processes and hence expect to spend more on technology consulting than SMEs. In terms of service categories, right? A service category is a collection of service lines, both regulated service lines and non-regulated service lines. You see audit and assurance, 48.5% of the respondents ticked off this box. Second was tax advisory and compliance as a category of services. And number 3 is IT advisory, okay, which includes IT solution business. Now, if you look at the audit assurance, this, of course, includes, as what I said, non-regulated service lines. It also includes accounting advisory. If you take that out and you only focus on statutory audit, the percentage actually goes down. So what does that tell you? It says that, the percentages are actually not very far from each other. It's about 40+% for all the 3 categories. So IT solution business is actually catching up with the traditional professional services that SMPs normally offer, and even the Big Four offers. But of course, the Big Four nowadays, some people do not know whether they are accounting firms or they are technology companies. So, everything is changing. So, just one word relating to audit and assurance. There are a lot of research studies which says that professional services are less impacted by digital disruption than other, than other modes of, business. However, there is a PwC research study in 2015 which says there is a 97.5% probability that accounting audit will be fully automated within 20 years. Okay, so I mean, if you have another 10 years in the business, it's okay. But if you're just entering the profession, take note that within 20 years, according to this PwC research, and 97.5% is as good as 100%, will be fully automated. So very good incentive to diversify your service offerings. Now, very quickly, professional advice attributes. We also ask the respondents, okay, what do they actually look for when they get professional advice? What are the top main priority when they receive it? Number 1 was quality, 78%, and relevance, 68%, and timeliness, QRT, quality, relevance, and timeliness. Sometimes what is shown is less important than what is not shown. Can you guess what is not here, which you probably thought that was important to most corporates for those service providers? What is not here? Sorry? All right, that's exactly, yeah. Where is the cost? The cost is not here. What they're talking about is the one quality, which means rigor and relevance and timeliness, customized information and so on and so forth. So if you dig deeper, right, we actually gave them 5 options, right? Cost of advice was actually 4th. And regional or global support was in fact less, and a wide range of services was even less. So I think, and looking at the free text comments that came out from the survey, a lot of them said, we want customized information which is relevant to my company. So effective communication is becoming a very important differentiator in securing and retaining customers for professional services today. And I just saw this. On the web, and I thought it was very relevant. It says, if the lawyer speaks in legalese, or the accountant uses lots of arcane financial terms without bothering to explain them, look for someone else. Okay, so yeah, communication seems to be the main differentiator. And if you are a professional service provider, it will be your competitive advantage if you look at this area and improve it. So thinking ahead, of course, this is ACCA's slogan, think ahead. Okay, if you look at the next 3 years, okay, the survey is basically asking corporates, next 3 years, what have you budgeted for? So in tandem with that, if you're a professional service provider and you're drawing up your 3-year plans, okay, think about this. Okay, basically, to diversify beyond regulated services, especially if you want to regionalize. We all know how regulated some markets are when it comes to audit services, let's say in ASEAN, right? How do you get beyond that? Okay, one strategy would be to focus on non-regulated services. Invest in new technologies, cloud computing, data analytics, develop a digital marketing strategy, attract and develop talent in both technical and soft skills, as what was communicated in the morning. ACCA has seven competencies. Only one competency talks about technical, right? It is a central competency, but all around it, you see all the so-called technical competencies, for example, vision and emotional quotient and so on and so forth. So the soft skills are becoming, including communications, is becoming more and more important. Building networks and partnerships to extend knowledge, share resources, and enter into referral arrangements. So these are some of the recommendations. What I've given you is only a slice of the cake. Okay? Only a slice of the cake. If you want the whole cake, all you have to do is just go to this website, accglobal.com, and you can just focus on the QR code, and you will actually get to the website. So maybe I'll just leave it for 1 or 2 seconds if you're interested. And besides that, you also have a hard copy of a 4-page brochure in your bag, I believe. No? Okay, so anyway, there's a digital copy that you can download immediately. So thank you very much for listening, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.